This is The Edge of Excellence, empowering people to shape the future. Let's inspire, innovate, and explore together. Hello, and welcome to Edge of Excellence, the podcast where we explore how leadership, culture, and technology can empower businesses to grow and thrive. I'm Jess DeForge, and today we're diving into a topic that's more universal than most people admit: imposter syndrome. And this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm really excited to dive in today. Imposter syndrome is those moments where you worry that you're not good enough, that you're in over your head, or that everyone else has it figured out except for you. Today, we're talking with members of the iuvo team who have experienced imposter feelings firsthand.
I'm the co-host, Bryon Beilman, and here at iuvo, we talk a lot about growth, excellence, and stepping outside your comfort zone. But the truth is, growth brings discomfort, and discomfort is where imposter syndrome lives and where it likes to live. Today, we're joined by two experts who know this feeling very well. Derek Murphy is a senior consultant at iuvo with over 20 years of hands-on leadership experience in IT. He spent his career helping organizations grow and scale, working across Linux, storage, virtualization, automation, and people management. Even with deep expertise, Derek understands how imposter syndrome can show up during moments of complexity, change, and leadership, and how clarity is built over time. We're also joined by Ken Hillstrom, a remote support specialist at iuvo, educator, and lifelong learner. Ken is deeply curious by nature and passionate about learning anything tech-related. That drive to learn and growth comes with his own challenges, and Ken brings a thoughtful perspective on navigating self-doubt while continuing to show up, ask questions, and support others. Together, our guests are here to talk openly about the emotional side of high performance and how you can build a culture where it's safe to learn, try, fail, and then try again. Let's jump in.
Excellent. Thank you, Bryon. So I want to start off. This is a question for the group, but maybe we'll start with Derek and then we can move to Ken. And then Bryon, if you have any feedback as well, I'd love to hear from you. I want to ask first, what comes to mind for you personally when you think of imposter syndrome, Derek?
So when I think about imposter syndrome, it is this idea and concept that is, I like to equate it to, squirrels in the brain just sort of gnawing. It is unreasonable doubt. It is a moment of feeling insecure, and it is something that kind of sometimes creeps up out of nowhere. So it's sneaky because you can be feeling great, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you start to have feelings of self-doubt, and self-doubt can be a different type of feeling. So it's more of a just spontaneous, like, panic almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, what about you?
I agree very much with what Derek was saying as far as it being something that will present you with self-doubt and panic. In my experience, it's been something that it's an obstacle to trying new things or getting into learning something new, especially in a working environment. It's definitely a barrier to entry for a lot of people that are maybe curious about changing careers or looking to try something new. It, like Derek was saying, can come out of nowhere, but it also, like if you've had an experience in the past where you've tried something and failed, dramatically, or in front of people, or, you messed up in an environment and you got in trouble for it. I say trouble, something happened like that really, it can live within you for a little while and then kind of fester and turn into more, like Derek was saying, it might seem like it come out of nowhere sometimes, but sometimes it's just waiting. So yeah, oftentimes I've like to define it as a barrier to entry.
Yeah, I really align with that. What about you, Bryon?
As the CEO, I think maybe some people think I have it all figured out, which I don't. So, it's like, but when it's like, I don't know, sometimes. So what I'll say to that though is that the philosophy that I've always had is to hire people that are better and smarter than me. And so, I think, I have to realize that there's no one person, whether they are in charge of people or they're fostering a culture leadership of culture, however you want to say that. And I think that so I've had to come to just realize that, I may not be, I'm not any smarter or better or anything than I'm a higher. Hopefully, they're all smarter than me, and so it's a role I play to make sure that everyone's taken care of. But I do think that, uh, as an example, a lot of my neighbors, when I talk to them, they say, "What do you do?" Or I say, "Oh, I just work in IT." Because I don't. It's the title alone sometimes feels overwhelming, so I don't really care about the title as much. So, but it has that root of imposter syndrome. Like, I don't feel like I'm not out there saying I'm a CEO and I'm awesome. Like more like I work with a team that's awesome.
No, I love that, Bryon. And I remember very vividly my very first event that I did at iuvo. And I was so thankful to have you in the booth with me. I was so clearly very nervous. I was very jittery. And I think you saw that in me. And at that time, had a lot more belief in me than I had in myself. And, we had a conversation about imposter syndrome and just like being confident and this like fake it till you make it mentality. And it really helped me get through that first event, knowing that the CEO, to your point, doesn't have it all figured out and didn't from the start. And that this is like a very normal part of the human experience, especially professionally. What would you all say is, when does this show up most often for you? Maybe you've overcome it to a point where it's not really an issue anymore. Maybe it still is, but when do you find it's coming up most often? Ken, we'll start with you this time.
When I'm trying something new or when I'm making a big shift, um, when that decision comes with what I would consider some responsibility,
Hmm.
when that happens and that responsibility sets in and you kind of take a step back and look at the broader picture of what you're doing and what you're supposed to be doing, and that's when I see it the most, is kind of up front,
Yeah.
when I'm encountering something like that. So for example, I'm like you, a career changer, from education,
Yeah.
and pivoting from education to IT is a pivot, like, I mean, that's not even horizontal, whatever direction that is. um, and it really, it was nerve wracking because, as a IT hobbyist growing up and having that as like a side set skill set, it really didn't get it. The imposter syndrome set in really, really strongly there. And that was a pretty big, I mean, it was a complete career shift from
Yeah.
one career to the next,
Yeah.
learning a whole new skill set and trying to learn how to apply them. That's when it came in the most for me, I'd say recently. Um, Here coming up too, I'm going to be a parent, and that imposter syndrome is setting in a little bit as well. Like, not really sure, am I the responsibility, looking back at the responsibilities of that is astronomical as well. So,
Yeah.
you look at those things and you really get a sense of, am I going to be able to do this or not? So yeah, and here I have found, uh, this may be leading into a different question, but having a support network is something that really has pulled me out of it, um,
Yeah.
either professionally or in my personal life. Having somebody or a group of people there to really back you up has been
Yeah.
kind of the fulcrum to getting me out of those areas. So it might be the same experience for you or someone else too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that you are talking about not just imposter syndrome when it comes to your professional life, but it can also
Mm,
creep into your personal life. And I think becoming a parent is probably one that a lot of people could relate to as well.
mhm.
Derek, are there certain times that you find this creeps in more often than others? Or do you feel like you're kind of at a point where you've learned to kind of manage this?
It's something that is sort of like a living, breathing organism. I have experienced it many times in my life. When I was uh, younger, I think less so, because I think part of imposter syndrome also has to do with experience. Learning about you know all of the things I don't know. The more experience that I have, the more understanding that I've had about computers and IT in general. My background is a computer science background and more of a software development, but all of my IT knowledge I've kind of gained through work. And
Mm.
every job I've had has been sort of something I haven't done before. I started off in help desk, and then all of a sudden I found myself responsible for engineering organizations, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't know how they do any of this stuff, but I figured out and I learned. And kind of going through the trials and tribulations of like experimentation, you have to lose a little bit of fear and realize that, like, it may sound scary and feel scary, but you're probably not going to do anything that cannot be fixed. And same thing goes for parenting. I became a parent 12 years ago, and I was horrified. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to trust me with this baby. And what am I supposed to do? I got to take parenting classes because, that's what everybody tells me to do. And then we missed our parenting classes. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm even more unprepared. Like, we're going into this blind. And now my kid's 12 and we made it, and they're thriving and happy. But, it is a scary thing when, you're presented with something that you've really never done before. And, becoming a parent, I think, is an easy example of that. Everybody becomes a new parent for the first time, and there's zero amount of preparation and planning you can do to catch all bad cases. It's just going to be a surprise for years.
It's honestly, it's still a struggle for me. It's something I feel like I battle every day. And I have, moved leaps and bounds from where I was for sure. But like Ken said, I'm a former educator. And when I realized that the career wasn't aligned for me anymore, that was a really difficult decision. And especially for teaching, it feels so niche, where I struggled to see where my skill sets would apply to other roles. And it took talking to my community and leaning into them to realize that marketing would be a great transition for me. And I was fortunate enough that iuvo saw, that value that I was bringing to the table. And it's been a goal of mine every year to continue to work on my confidence and trusting myself and kind of combating the imposter syndrome. And similar to what Ken said, the support of the people that I work with has actually helped me more than my friends and family. My friends and family love me no matter what. And so even if I'm like horrific at something, I feel like they're still going to support and cheerlead. And I feel like the support I've received from my colleagues at iuvo has been huge. Just the fact that, Ken, you reached out to me in like my first couple of days and you were like, hey, former teacher, me too. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. Like Ken knew that I was probably dealing with this, and he was spot on. So just having people to lean into has been really helpful. But I post about it a lot on LinkedIn because I think it's important to keep talking about it. It helps me to talk about it. And my goal in talking about it is hoping that if there's other people that are struggling with trying something new or transitioning into something new, but are not doing it because they have this imposter syndrome, that maybe they'll be willing to try if they hear more people talking about it and showing that like they overcame it, they took the jump, and they were okay on the other side. So Bryon, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but does imposter syndrome still show up for you at all at this point in your career?
Yes, but I want to back up just for just a moment, just to talk about, each one of you, working with each one of you in different capacities. I think you all do a great job of not showing that imposter syndrome. And so what it really tells me that you have to have these conversations, because you could be overwhelmed or you could feel pressure and you're like, oh my God, I've got myself too deep here. And, should I be doing IT or should I be doing marketing or whatever? And so, if you're hopefully you're in the right environment, that you can say, not everybody, a lot of times you can do a new job and like, I got to pretend like everything's right. And then otherwise they're going to know I'm an imposter. Right. And so a lot of times it takes people a while to break down that, like, let their walls down a little bit. And hopefully you can build a culture, be in a culture that allows you to do that. And so, so you have, so I say, that I'm glad you are all on this podcast to talk about this, because perhaps you guys are such high performers that nobody even knows. You often think that you're, you may be doing something terrible, and then you get a kudos because like, whoa, where'd that come from? So, that's kind of thing. So I really appreciate that. But I'll say briefly on your question, the time it hits me the most probably is when we have an all company party where we invite people's, families and I look out there and there's not just our employees, but there's, 4x the time of people, or 3 to 4x time people. Because I go, oh my gosh, we're not just supporting people, we're supporting their families, and we're supporting, and like, don't screw this up, Bryon, right? So that's what it gets me the most. So it's looking at kind of the deeper responsibility that I might feel at times.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to hear from you, from Derek, from Ken. At any level, you can feel imposter syndrome. And so just like not feeling alone in something, I think can be really empowering. And I think, Ken, when you were talking about the responsibility, so the weight of responsibility can really impact the level of imposter syndrome that you feel. I feel like that's exactly what you're talking about, Bryon, like feeling responsible for so many people within the organization can create that feeling, as well for you. So I want to talk a little bit about what we do within a business organization to help people. So I'm curious what all your feedback may be, because what Bryon said is true. A lot of times people with imposter syndrome are also high performers, and it may be difficult to know whether people on your teams are struggling with this. However, it can be really helpful to support them. But how do you support when you don't know? And so I'm curious if any of you have feedback on either questions to ask or things to look for that may help you, address this with your team. Derek, we can start with you for this one.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to sort of suss out whether somebody is struggling with that is building upon just having a very open dialogue with them. In my 22 years that I've been working in IT, I've always worked places where people first. I've enjoyed the people I work with. I always have a good relationship with my management team, and so having the feeling of safety and confidence to be able to go, hey, Ed, I am struggling with XYZ, and I know you've worked on it. Let's sit down and chat, and not feeling like Ed's gonna, think poorly of me. And a lot of that is, being able to work in a team environment. As a consultant, I have, 20 odd peers that are, having similar experience with me, and have, a wide breadth of experience to fall back on. Versus if I was a solo IT guy for 20 years and it's just me, myself, and I forever, I got nobody to look to. I have no support. I have no community. And so, having people around you that you trust, I think, is paramount to being able to, help combat this.
Yeah, Ken, I'm really curious what you have to say, Ken, because I wonder if it's going to align with my thinking at all from our backgrounds that we share.
Well, yeah, maybe so. The experience I had, and one of the reasons why I actually shifted careers, was very much for the reasons Derek was saying. It all revolved really around communication and support. Where I had been previously, there, were communication breakdowns and holes in supports. Granted, if people were stretched pretty thin, but that was the case. And the accountability from, different levels wasn't very consistent. So I oftentimes got challenged, but not empowered, if that makes sense.
Ooh, yeah.
So just really, told what I should be doing better, or what I could be doing differently without, actionable, genuine, like useful feedback or support, being like, and I can help you, and I can help you, and I know someone that can help you.
Yeah.
Things like that. And it really, that one of the reasons why I love iuvo specifically so much, and not a plug for iuvo, but maybe is just because I feel everybody that we work with here at this company is all on the same page as far as, if you don't know something or if you need help, ask. And everybody has been willing to do that. And I think that to me is like paramount. It's like almost like we've normalized being like not knowing something, or like being out, not
Yeah.
having a skill set particularly. Like I've noticed, like Derek, you're a very high level technician.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, times you're like, I don't know how to do this. Does anybody else know how? And then other people are like, no, I don't know. Let's work on it together. Like there's just so much of a collaborative, supportive culture here that I think if it were everywhere, it would really normalize imposter syndrome and the way that people feel and the way that people are hesitant to take risks or learn, because they don't have that support network to fall back on.
I think there's a lot of stigma in asking for help, and same same thing could be said for mental health and struggling and saying like, hey, I am feeling anxious or depressed or sad. There's a lot of stigma around raising your hand and being like, I need help. I need a little bit of assistance. And
Right.
same thing with imposter syndrome. It's the same type of vulnerability. It's being vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Bryon, in your role as a leader, I mean, you did it with me. I don't know if you remember the moment I'm talking about, if it was just so blatantly obvious on my face that I was like a deer in headlights. But, what do you try to do for members of your team? You've had several people come to iuvo that have less traditional IT backgrounds. And so I'm sure it's come up for multiple people. How do you support team members with something like this?
Well, one thing that Derek said, or a word, it's the word trust. And you have to earn trust over time. And I think that when you have an environment where you start seeing that everyone's trusting each other, like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So maybe I could start trusting people too, and I can open myself up a little bit. I don't know if you might remember this, but there's a part of the orientation where I share one of my biggest mistakes, taking down a whole rack in a data center by hitting the power button, and I was like, hey, this stuff happens. It's okay to mess up. We're all human. And I try to show that, everyone can make mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes as long as we learn from mistakes. So that people, I hope that they can go, okay, I don't need to know everything. So I think it comes in, it's a big cultural element where if you walk into a place, you see people don't trust each other, that is a problem. If you see that people are hoarding their knowledge or they feel they're better than others, which that's not here. Like we really, some of the smartest people here are like, wow, you are so humble and you're the smartest person I've ever met. And you're humble. Like, that's amazing. Right. So I think that can be modeled, and hopefully it sounds like a little bit that we've successfully modeled that, but it also goes into what Derek said too. And what all of you said is that it's not just work, it's personal life. It's things happen, life happens.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to realize people are human, and, as competent as you all are, life happens. And knowing that, okay, I'm not 100% today, and that's probably okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I think about my own thoughts on imposter syndrome and how you can support team members, I immediately think back to my classroom, because every classroom has a classroom culture, and it's such a big component to starting the year off is building that culture. And it includes things like you and Derek mentioned of trust, and allowing children to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. But that absolutely applies to businesses as well. You need people to feel like they have the psychological safety to be vulnerable, to make mistakes and know that it's okay. And when I think back to imposter syndrome in the classroom, students have it all the time because they have never done the tasks that you're asking them to do. I'm not a writer. I'm not good at math. I don't know how to write a hypothesis. And it's your job as the educator to help them work through that imposter syndrome by challenging their thoughts on that. And it's really hard to do it to yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like I can see how that transfers to a business where you can be asking questions to people and challenging their beliefs about themselves. It's one of the things that Jeff here at iuvo did for me. We had, a one-on-one meeting, and he was giving me some really wonderful feedback, and I just couldn't let it sink in. It just didn't align with my beliefs about myself. And he really kind of helped me dig into that a bit and just say, like, what I'm saying, like, I want you to hear what I'm saying, and I want you to like allow this to penetrate in. And I actually had goals, my goals for the company around my confidence, around speaking up and not questioning myself. It's like, any statement I had a question mark on the end. And he's like, no, just say it. Don't ask, just say it, and stand on that. I think having someone in the company, like, one, recognize that I was struggling with that, two, challenge me on it, and then really create a goal around my confidence to help me work on this imposter syndrome was huge for the growth that I've made here. But it required those conversations. that open communication.
And Jess, I do remember that, our event when you were just thrown into a conference, right? And we're like, okay, how's this going to work? So it is great to hear that support from Jeff. I think we've all seen that with many people. I would say from the outside though, Jess, I think it's glad to see you're starting to believe in yourself a little bit more, because we're like, she's amazing. And you're like, no, not me.
It's coming along. Yeah. It's very similar to giving someone a compliment on their sweater and then they immediately degrade it and say, oh, this whole thing. Oh, this, it's like, just say thank you. And just like
a compliment.
Exactly. Just say thank you. So, Bryon, you mentioned something, and I'm curious to get people's feedback on this about humility and confidence. And I think, there can be this delicate line. And I think the people at iuvo are so humble, which makes it so much easier to like ask questions and talk to them. But I think there is a place for confidence. And I think you need to build your confidence in order to overcome imposter syndrome. So how do you kind of balance confidence with being humble? I don't know if anyone has an immediate thought that they want to jump in on, but Derek.
So part of, I think the value of building experience is developing confidence. Mm. And so, in my own experience, I've had very large projects that I've never done before. I think about my first, multi-million-dollar data center project that I had to, be responsible for and lead. A massive amount of responsibility. This is going to lead the company into the next 5+ years. If I don't choose the right architecture, it won't be performant. Just tons and tons of things. And did I know everything that I was doing? No, absolutely not. And I also had to trust my team because I had a network engineer working for me. I had other system engineers working for me. And so I had to develop and then delegate out. And if I only had a couple of years of experience under my belt, I would have felt all kinds of insecurity and fear and distrust for people. After having done it for a couple of decades, I was more familiar with some of the pitfalls that I might hit, and things like that. Now, as a consultant, I have a different type of environment around me. I have clients that are of all different industries and experience levels. And so part of being humble is recognizing that like not all people are the same. I am a psychology nerd. I have a background in psychology as well from my education. And I think, recognizing that we are talking to people versus technology is important. Yeah. And, you cannot talk to a principal level scientist and a junior level HR intern the same way. And it has nothing to do with education. It's really, or rather intelligence. It's just background, it's background and experience. And so, right. Recognizing the room that you're walking into, know your audience, know who's around you is very, very important.
No, absolutely. And can be difficult to do. I think you do it really well, Derek. You and I have had multiple very technical conversations because I've chatted with you about like blog content and things like that. And you've never made me feel less than for my lack of technical knowledge. So I think that's something that you really excel at. Thanks. And do you have any thoughts on how you balance building your confidence and being someone that is confident, but also maintaining, being a humble person?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just use iuvo again as an example. For most recent experience, the people that we give out kudos for adhering or like just as a recognition to our fellow colleagues for their exemplary work. And one of them that my personal favorite is humility. And I like it so much because I can put it on every single kudos I give, because everybody just expresses that general level of humility just overall. Everyone's very humble. And I do think that comes from the leadership team, and here specifically at iuvo, but I think in general from the top down, like setting the example of being like just having humility, setting that example, showing that everyone it's okay, like it's safe to feel non-confident and not feel confident, and maybe lessen that fear of failure for them. so that then translates into more confidence. So
Yeah.
it's kind of it's an interesting cycle that I think really is the catalyst is the leadership, or like who here is setting the example, here is giving everybody the confidence and the safety and the, you know, just the good vibes, the good feeling to do these things.
Right.
And then that, I mean, when you do something like that, at least for us, I found our first reaction isn't, oh, look how awesome I am for doing this. It's gratitude and it's humility and being like, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without this person. I couldn't have done this without your help or your guidance. And maybe you could have, but maybe they helped and you still feel that way. I feel like everybody here does that. And I think that in itself kind of runs the confidence engine, like for a lot of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Bryon, do you have any thoughts or opinions on how to kind of navigate that?
Sure. I think, well, one of the things that I think a characteristic of people in this company is, and even we describe Ken in that in the opening, is a lifelong learner, having a growth mindset. So if everyone has that mindset, says, well, I know a lot, but I don't know everything. And even if a junior person comes along and they're fresh out of, they haven't done a lot of IT, they have something to add. They have a skill set, or even if it's not a technical thing, it might be a customer service skill that like, wow, you really know how to talk to these customers to calm them down, or it could be a number of things. And so in any successful organization, you find nobody does anything alone. Right. And, certain people get propped up, Steve Jobs or whatever, like he's brilliant, whatever. But if you look at the essence of it, everyone has, empowers each other to do great things. So I think to be honest, we have humility as a core value, and we added that actually because we had somebody who did not exemplify that, and it was a problem. It became a cultural problem, and we said, how are we going to solve this going forward? Let's just make sure that the people that we hire seem to represent a level of humility, and we can use our core values to kind of shape that a little bit.
Yeah. When I think about people that may be listening that are currently experiencing imposter syndrome, I think about wanting to give them some advice or food for thought on mindset shifts that have maybe worked for some of us. And when I think about the mindset shifts that have worked for me to get to where I am now, and there's still plenty of work to be done, let's be clear. But I think about truly that conversation with Jeff, and every time I feel it creeping in to the point of almost this like paralyzing fear of like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to show up at this meeting and actually have thoughts that anybody cares about? I just have to keep telling myself to trust the feedback that I'm getting and believe in that. I think there's always a place for trusting your gut. And I have to separate for myself that this imposter syndrome is not my gut. This is not a point of truth that I should be listening to. I need to really lean into the feedback I'm getting and trust the feedback that I'm getting and just keep pushing forward. And then every time I do that, it's okay. And then I have to be like, and see, everything was fine. That little voice, that imposter syndrome was incorrect. And I need to stop listening to it because it doesn't align with reality. I'm curious if you all have, mindset shifts that have helped you as you've kind of navigated life with how to overcome it in the moment. Because it's definitely getting better for me. It's not non-existent, but it's like a flash instead of like living in it before. Ken, do you have something that has worked for you or works for you? I mean, you're about to be a new dad, so maybe something that you're doing right now that's helping you kind of think about that.
Well, I mean, if you were to open up my brain right now, it would just be a bunch of who knows what running around because everything's on fire. But Bryon, you said it exactly what I tell myself, and actually what Greg, who my manager, told me from day one and continues to tell me is that you have value, which is awesome. And not like, oh, it's okay, buddy. Like you have value, somewhere. It's really like genuine. From day one, he was very much like, you may not know how to do X, Y, and Z, but you have value in these areas. Like, this is why we hired you. So like, let's explore that. But remember, these are your strengths. And if all else fails, you just remember that, like, you have value, and this is what you're good at right here. And this will come. Everything else will come. And that has happened. And I think that's awesome. And I would highly encourage anybody that is experiencing an imposter syndrome feeling, or feeling of uncertainty, that you do have value. You will bring something to the table. I think the ability to recognize that in people is very important too.
You could take that. I was thinking that as you venture down this parenthood, you and your wife can like just affirm each other and support each other. Like, hey, you got this, we got this, and if you don't, you have a network of people that you can always call upon, whether it be family or even if you shoot out something to iuvo going, hey, anybody deal with crying babies 24/7?
What do we do about colic?
Yeah.
That's okay, honey. The next diaper will be better.
That's right. It will be.
And Derek, what about you? Have you had mindset shifts that have kind of helped you better navigate this? Or they're kind of like go-to things that help you when it does creep up?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was basically a perfectionist and highly anxious. So if I did something wrong, it was like, oh my God, I'm wrong. This is terrible.
Yeah.
And, as I've gotten older and more experience under my belt, I've sort of lost the, everything has to be, perfect from the start. It's more, try and iterate, fail fast. I have worked in many software organizations under agile methodologies, and, iterate fast, fail fast, experiment, try, don't be afraid. And, building up sort of the confidence in myself to, explore and try new things. And this goes outside of IT. If you're afraid to travel, why? Are you afraid of getting on a plane? Are you afraid of just being in a new spot? What's the worst that's going to happen? And you have to kind of just feel out what works for you and take small baby steps. And that could be learning a new technology. If you're a Windows person, you're getting into Linux. Oh my God, I don't know a whole new operating system. How am I going to figure this out? Well, just dive in. Start easy. Test, experiment. And so I think a big thing for me has just been realizing that not everything seems as catastrophic as it's going to be. Speaking about parenthood, my kid is 12 now. There have been plenty of mistakes made along the way. We've had plenty of colds, and we all persevere, and everything is fine in the end.
It's going to be okay, Ken.
It's going to be okay.
See, by the time that this podcast episode airs, this little baby will be here. And I can't wait for you to get to watch this, but be a cool new version of yourself when you get to.
I'll look back and be like, oh, I was so naive. Oh.
No, you just have to keep hearing Greg's voice in your head to remind yourself of how much value you bring to this baby. Absolutely. Bryon, anything for you that has helped you along the way, a mindset shift? I know that you had that fake it till you make it, slogan.
Yeah. That's how Jeff and I started the company, is fake it till you make it, and, being kind of the primary salesperson, I'm going into meeting people all the time and say, can you help me? Like, oh yeah, we can help you. And like, can we look at each other? I think we can do it, so you gotta realize that. So that's a mindset we've had, and it's been successful largely. I mean, there's this balance of like, I don't know if we could, like, I've never seen this before, but I think we can do it. And I think the more people you have around you, the more confidence you can get. I personally am loving these stories of hearing how Jeff mentored you and how Greg, and so it means that this is permeated into the culture, and that I'm hoping everybody's having the same experiences. And so that I think, so it goes down to culture again, I think, is living the culture, it's not just on a placard somewhere. So I think, I often jump into the water before I know it's the temperature, that kind of thing, and you go, yeah, like parenthood, or like, it's cold. Geez, well, what am I gonna do next? So But I think I would encourage our listeners to think about themselves in these times and think about the support network they have. And to be honest, if you don't have that support network, you got to try to find it, or don't subject yourself to somebody who's not going to support you in this way. Because I think we're having this big kumbaya moment here, but not everybody does, right? You're listening, going, "Gosh, this is I have this, and I continually have it because I'm always being challenged in ways, or or being blamed, or whatever it might be." So there, you could find those ways, and if you need some advice, whatever, you could come to anybody on this podcast. And we could get you something with resources, whether you're just a listener or a client or whatever.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, Bryon. All of us work at iuvo, so we're coming from a shared experience that plenty of other people don't have. And if you are someone that struggles with imposter syndrome and you don't have a supportive culture, you don't have teammates that you feel you can lean into, the person you're reporting to isn't supportive in that way, it can be really difficult to overcome it. And if anything, it kind of throws gasoline on that fire. And I think that those are some of the moments where you have to, look internally to decide if that's the right fit for you anymore, or whether you feel comfortable having conversations to express that you need more support. And either one of those is scary. But I think, Ken, you kind of mentioned that was part of your process of, making a shift in career, is not feeling like that you had that support and alignment anymore. And so I do think that it's important to acknowledge that doesn't exist for everybody. And it may require some big moves to decide if where you're currently sitting is the right spot for you to continue to grow in a healthy way. It's interesting because I think about my own imposter syndrome, and I report to Matt at the company. And I remember disagreeing with him on a one-on-one conversation. We were talking about something to do with marketing, and he had an opinion. And I said, I actually disagree, and here's why. And he's like, oh, yeah. And afterwards, he's like, I just want to pause and tell you how much I loved that you just disagreed with me. I was like, what? And he saw it as like such a moment of growth for me. And he was absolutely right, because I had been afraid to voice, an opposite opinion about something, because my imposter syndrome would tell me, like, who am I to have this opinion? And so even just him calling it out in that way and kind of celebrating it the way that he did, I was like, ooh, like it definitely like helped chip away at that imposter syndrome for me, just to have a manager that would say something like that and be so supportive of, like, I want to hear all your thoughts, whether they agree with me or not. I want you to speak them, because to your point, Ken, you bring value. And so we want to be in a company where we feel comfortable to be able to share those things. We're coming up to time, but I do have a few more questions I want to try to squeeze in here. What is something you wish someone had told you earlier in your career? And if you need a second to sit with that, feel free to sit with that for a second. But is there something that someone could have said to you earlier on in your career that could have either helped expedite the process of getting a hold of imposter syndrome, or just made things a little bit easier? Ken, you're nodding. Are you ready?
Yeah.
He's got something in the chamber.
I think that if I had been told that it's okay to mess up, it's okay to fail, and that failure is the greatest teacher, which I do believe. If I'd been told that earlier, I feel that, the confidence, at least baseline confidence, baseline imposter syndrome would have been a little bit more inverse, for sure. So I would encourage anybody, like that's listening, it's okay to mess up, and that is how you learn the best. It's like those failures will teach you, whatever.
Derek, what about you?
I learned early on in my career of failures being a good teacher. I made and learned from my mistakes. I think I learned early on that people were really important, and it is one of the hardest things in my career to figure out how to do. I entered my career thinking all about technology and learning new skills and stuff, and it wasn't until my first management role that I really got a solid understanding of how much of technology is also psychological. It's dealing with customers, it's dealing with peers, dealing with vendors and support staff. It's frankly dealing with software engineers that write code. If I'm struggling with an application and trying to understand like why somebody wrote something a certain way, or understanding the quality of an organization. There's many enterprise organizations that have gone down over the years, and they have done poor things to our customers, and understanding that like not everybody is going to remain a top player forever. I had a lot of VMware experience, early on, and now I don't necessarily recommend VMware to my customers because over the years VMware has changed a lot, and now they are Broadcom. I think, to Ken's point, failure is a good learning tool, and nothing is forever. Things can always be fixed, and so, losing fear is an important thing. I think fear is a big limiter to people.
I think if I could have received the message that I got from that conversation with Jeff way earlier in my career, I'm talking pre-iuvo, I may have left teaching even sooner. I think that the fear of not being good enough to try something new, or the fear of failure, was like really paralyzing for me. And so my biggest takeaway from that conversation, and what I would hope people would try to apply for themselves if they're struggling with this, is just questioning yourself when the imposter syndrome creeps in. Just asking yourself, like, is this true? Does this align with the feedback that I get from my coworkers, from my manager, from other people in my life? And if it doesn't, then you have to just be honest with yourself that that is not true, and try to push past it and see it for what it is, which is just this accumulation of fear that is creating this voice in your head that is keeping you from really amazing opportunities that you might really excel at if you're willing to try.
There are so many people out there that are willing to mentor you. All you have to do is ask. So, if you, as you go this road and go, it doesn't matter what topic, if, more people love to help you than right?
Yeah.
It could be in your job. It could be a peer, because it could be somebody that you run into at a social event. And I think that a lot of us are all afraid to ask for help because it shows weakness. And so you just try to tough it out, and whatever it might be. And sometimes that's good. You get tough things out and you build up some grit. But at some point you like, I could have quit banging my head on the desk for a whole day if I would have just said, hey, I need some help. And it doesn't matter what level you were at. I'll tell you what's challenging for me as a CEO is that I don't often reach out to the rest of you as much as I should. I learn from you and I ask questions, but I should do that more because so I think we can all learn from that. I think it's and I wish I would have followed that advice that I'm giving right now earlier.
I think that's great, Bryon. And I think that was a really good point to end on too, is just this idea that if you are not ready for like a career shift and these bigger things that we've talked about, just reaching out to find a mentor can go a long way to kind of help you navigate the best next steps for you. And there are websites out there that can help you find a mentor for anything. So it doesn't have to be that you're reaching out to someone that asking for them to be a mentor. It can be a stranger that is really good at what they do, whether it's a job you're curious about or just more like a life coach type thing. There are people out there, like you said, Bryon, that would be more than happy to help you along your journey. Before I ask my final question, any closing thoughts that people would like to say?
Be brave. Just go for it.
Absolutely, Derek.
Ask questions.
Ask a question. Oh, ask questions.
Ask questions. Yeah, ask questions. Definitely don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a wrong question. It's only the ones you don't ask that are the wrong ones.
That's right. Great.
Yeah. And if the person you asked gives you a different vibe than what you just did, they're not worth your time, in my opinion. So if you ask a question and you're made to feel less than for asking it, then take that for
Ask
what it
someone
is.
else.
And
Mhm.
That's right. Yeah.
Ask someone
no,
else.
yeah, don't let that be the door that closes for
Right.
you, for sure. No, those are great. So we like to ask all of the guests on the podcast when they're on for the first time for a fun fact about them that may surprise people. So if you need to think about it for a second, feel free. But a fun fact about you that may surprise people.
I am a people and psychology nerd, and I'm going through a genealogy project with my family, just organizing. I have 6 generations worth of stuff to collect and tons of photos, and so that's my like personal pet project that I nerd out about.
That is so
Awesome.
cool.
Are you related to anybody famous? Like you go back 6 generations and George Washington or something, you know?
No, we were just broke Irish immigrants.
Like most of us, yeah.
Yeah.
I saved a man from drowning when I was in 5th grade.
No way.
Yeah. So there we go.
It's great.
And then he was an older gentleman, and he was very confused, but he was drowning. And when we got him out of the water, he immediately told my mom that I tried to drown him.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Well, it's all in perspective, right?
Yeah, she saw and she knew. She was just like, okay. So
Thank goodness you had a witness.
Wow.
Well, Ken, I'm not surprised that you would have saved a life at some point, and also not surprised that that's how your story would
of
unfold.
course. Yeah, that's how I'm repaid.
Thank you both so much for not only being willing to come onto the podcast, but for being willing to be so vulnerable and open. It's been great to talk to all of you in this way, even though I've talked to you both offline about these topics. It's really cool to get to share this with a larger audience. But this brings us to the end of the episode of Edge of Excellence. Imposter syndrome is real and it's common. If there's one lesson to take away, it's this. You don't need to eliminate imposter feelings to succeed. You just need the right support, the right culture, and the confidence to keep moving forward. And as Ken and Derek said, ask questions. If you'd like to learn more about how iuvo uses transformative IT consulting to help people grow, thrive, and lead boldly, visit iuvotech.com. You'll also find this episode and all of our past conversations there.
Yeah, Derek and Ken, it was such a pleasure talking to you. And I agree with Jess, like being vulnerable. And I think what you've shared with us is in the audience is going to be very valuable to them. I think I would be surprised if people don't have imposter syndrome. And I think that's some really great strategies and just discussions around this. So thanks everyone here for listening. And until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and keep stepping into excellence, even when your imposter voice tries to argue otherwise.
Thank you for tuning in to The Edge of Excellence. We hope today's insights empower you to shape your future and rise to your full potential. Let's continue to grow, innovate, and lead, pushing the boundaries of excellence.